At 72, Sylvia Carter lived a quiet life in the town of Riverdale. Each day began the same way. A warm cup of coffee in her hand, sitting by the window of her modest home, soaking in the early morning calm. She had long since passed the age where people would normally retire. But Sylvia kept working, not out of necessity, but out of habit. It had been over 2 decades since she began her job as a cleaner at Valley Grocers, the largest supermarket chain in the area. For Sylvia, her work wasn't just about earning a paycheck. It was about staying connected to the world. Her neighbors marveled at her energy, but beneath her stoic exterior lay a lifetime of struggles. As a black woman, Sylvia had faced her share of prejudice, but she carried herself with grace. However, all that grace was about to be tested in a way no one, not even Sylvia herself, could have predicted. It was an ordinary Thursday when the incident occurred. After finishing her early shift at Valley Grocers, Sylvia decided to pick up a few essentials before heading home. She placed items carefully in her basket, smiled at the cashier she had come to know, and prepared to pay. But just as she stepped forward, the store manager, a towering man named Richard Hunter, stormed out of the back room. Richard had a reputation for being unkind, especially toward Sylvia. His deep-rooted bias was clear to anyone who paid attention, though he rarely expressed it outright. Today, however, something in him snapped. "There she is again!" Richard barked loudly, ensuring all eyes in the checkout line turned towards Sylvia. "I hope you did a better job cleaning this time. Last time it looked like you were slacking off on the job. Are we paying you to stand around?" Sylvia froze. The sting of his words hit her harder than they had ever done before. She had always known Richard didn't like her, not just because she was elderly, but because of her skin color. She saw it in the way he spoke to her compared to the younger, white employees. His voice was always condescending, belittling, as though she were an inconvenience he wished he could be rid of. "I always do my best, Mr. Hunter," Sylvia replied quietly, willing herself to stay composed. Richard wasn't done. "Your best," he sneered. "Having you work here is like cleaning the floors with a filthy mop. You should have retired years ago. We need people who can actually keep up, not someone who can barely shuffle across the floor." A wave of humiliation washed over her. The customers standing behind her shifted awkwardly, some looking away, others sneaking sympathetic glances. Sylvia's hands trembled as she reached for her groceries, the weight of Richard's words pressing down on her heart. Without a word, she collected her things and walked out of the store, her head held high even though she felt utterly crushed inside. At home, Sylvia sat in her favorite chair, looking out at the familiar view of the street. But today, it offered her no peace. The images of the store played over and over in her mind. Richard's cruel smirk, the customer's silence, her own helplessness in the face of his blatant disrespect. She had always been a strong woman, but this time, something inside her had changed. She realized she couldn't continue to tolerate such humiliation. Later that evening, her grandson Marcus, a young lawyer passionate about fighting discrimination, stopped by to visit. Marcus had always been close to his grandmother, admiring her resilience, but today, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. "Grandma, what's bothering you?" Marcus asked, sitting across from her. Sylvia hesitated, but after a moment, she told him what had happened at the store. She recounted Richard's words, her voice trembling with the pain of decades of silent endurance. "They think I'm nothing, Marcus. Just because I'm old. Just because I'm black." Anger flashed in Marcus's eyes. "That's discrimination, plain and simple. We should file a complaint. Take legal action against the store." But Sylvia shook her head. "I don't want to fight. I just want respect." Marcus didn't let it go. Determined to help his grandmother, he began researching Valley Grocers. What he found intrigued him. The company was struggling financially. This sparked an idea, a bold, audacious plan that could give Sylvia the power to stand up for herself without needing a lawsuit. "Grandma," Marcus said, a sly smile spreading across his face, "have you ever thought about owning the store?" Sylvia laughed at the absurdity. "Me? Owning a supermarket? That's ridiculous." But Marcus wasn't joking. He explained that with her savings and his legal expertise, they could potentially buy a significant stake in Valley Grocers. The chain's financial troubles meant that shares were affordable, and if they moved quickly, they could secure enough stock to gain control over the local store. At first, Sylvia dismissed the idea. It seemed too far-fetched, but the more she thought about it, the more the possibility intrigued her. Maybe this was her chance, not just to get back at Richard, but to ensure that no one else would ever be treated the way she had been. Over the next few days, Marcus worked tirelessly. He handled the legalities, negotiated with stockholders, and arranged financing. Sylvia's life suddenly became a whirlwind of meetings and decisions. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of excitement, a sense of purpose beyond her daily routine. She was no longer just a cleaner. She was on the verge of becoming an owner. 1 week later, the deal was finalized. Sylvia Carter, the woman Richard had mocked and humiliated, was now the co-owner of Valley Grocers. The following morning, Sylvia dressed with care. She smoothed her gray hair, donned her best outfit, and walked into the store with a confidence she hadn't felt in years. By her side was Marcus, who had supported her every step of the way. Inside, the store buzzed with its usual activity. Employees moved about, stocking shelves, helping customers, completely unaware of the shift in power that had occurred. Sylvia walked to the back of the store, where Richard was standing by the checkout, chatting loudly with a colleague. He saw her approach and frowned. "You're not needed today," Richard said coldly. "I'm sure we can manage without your services." Sylvia smiled, her voice calm and steady. "Actually, I'm here for a different reason." At that moment, a representative from the store's management company arrived, holding a folder of documents. He handed them to Richard, whose face paled as he skimmed through the papers. "This can't be right," Richard stammered. "What is this?" Marcus stepped forward. "It's quite simple. My grandmother now owns this store, and you, Richard, are fired." Richard's face turned red. "You can't fire me," he sputtered. "You're just a cleaner." Sylvia's smile never wavered. "Not anymore." The store fell silent as Richard realized the gravity of the situation. The very woman he had belittled now held the power to end his career, and she wasn't about to show him any mercy. Richard was escorted out of the building, his protests falling on deaf ears. Employees whispered among themselves, their eyes wide with disbelief. After he left, Sylvia gathered the remaining staff. She addressed them with a calm authority, telling them that from this day forward, the store would be run differently. Respect would be the cornerstone of the new management, and anyone who couldn't treat others with dignity, regardless of their role, wouldn't last long. The atmosphere in Valley Grocers shifted immediately. Employees, many of whom had suffered under Richard's harsh rule, began to relax. Smiles returned to their faces, and the tension that had once permeated the store dissipated. Word of Sylvia's remarkable transformation spread through Riverdale like wildfire. Locals began frequenting the store, not just to shop but to meet the woman who had quietly, yet powerfully, stood up against injustice. Sales soared, and the store became a beacon of fairness in the community. As for Sylvia, she remained humble despite her newfound success. Sitting in her favorite chair by the window, a cup of coffee in hand, she marveled at how much her life had changed in just a short time. She had not only reclaimed her dignity, but had set an example for others to follow. Sylvia Carter had become a symbol of quiet strength, proving that even the most overlooked among us have the power to change the world.